Control that screaming child, or I'll have security remove you both from this aircraft immediately." The sharp crack of flesh meeting flesh echoed through the first-class cabin. Flight attendant Karen Doyle's palm had just struck Amina Rahman's cheek as she cradled her 6-month-old daughter, Layla, against her chest. The baby's cries spiked from the sudden shock. Passengers in nearby seats raised their phones, recording what they assumed was justified discipline for an unruly passenger. Finally, someone with a backbone, an elderly woman in pearls, whispered approvingly, her gaze fixed on Amina's headscarf as though it were the root of the disruption. Amina's cheek burned, but her deep brown eyes stayed steady. She adjusted Layla's blanket with trembling hands, her boarding pass resting in her lap. Mrs. A. Rahman, embossed with an elite gold status code Doyle had ignored entirely. The cabin fell silent except for Layla's soft whimpering and the faint click of recording phones. Have you ever been judged as a bad parent in public before anyone asked if you needed help? Doyle straightened her navy uniform, silver wings catching the cabin lights as she turned toward her audience. The slap had energized her. She had an audience of premium-paying passengers, and she intended to show them she could maintain standards. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption," Doyle announced, her voice carrying through the cabin. "Some people simply don't understand appropriate travel etiquette." Murmurs of approval rippled through the rows. A businessman in a tailored suit shot a disapproving glance at Amina. "Always the same. Think they can just do whatever they want." Amina remained silent, gently bouncing Layla to soothe her. The baby's tiny fist curled around her mother's finger, a gesture that should have melted hearts, but instead seemed to irritate the watching passengers even more. Doyle pulled out her radio, speaking with theatrical authority. "Captain Reeves, we have a code yellow in first class. Disruptive passenger with infant, refusing to comply with crew instructions." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Karen. How do you want to proceed?" "I'm recommending immediate removal before departure. She's already delayed us 8 minutes with this tantrum." Amina glanced at her phone. 14 minutes until departure. Below that, a text notification. Corporate legal merger announcement scheduled for 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All systems ready. She slipped the phone away before Doyle could see the message. "Excuse me," Amina said quietly, her voice barely rising over the cabin noise. "My ticket shows seat 2A. I paid for first-class service, and I'd app her." Doyle cut her off with a sharp laugh. "Oh, please. I don't care what kind of sob story you rehearsed to get that seat. People like you are always trying to scam upgrades. I've seen every trick in the book. Flying under different names, pretending to have special circumstances." Her eyes flicked pointedly to Amina's hijab. Across the aisle, a young woman, maybe a college student, held up her phone for TikTok. "Y'all, this is insane. This flight attendant just slapped a Muslim mom with a baby. I can't even." Her viewer count ticked up, 847. 1, 233. 3,456. But the comments scrolling in were anything but sympathetic. Finally, someone standing up to entitled people. "Bet she'll play the religion card now. Flight attendant's a hero." Before we proceed further, I want to take a moment to invite you to be part of something bigger than just this story. If what you've heard so far has made you feel, think, or reflect, even for a moment, then hit that like button so more people can discover voices like these. Subscribe to Muslim Stories Unheard so you never miss the next untold truth waiting to be heard. And if you've lived through moments of bias, resilience, faith, or triumph, or even witnessed them, share your experience in the comments. Let's get back to our story. Doyle noticed the filming and amped up her performance. "Ma'am, if you can't manage your child appropriately, I have every right to request your removal from this aircraft. Airline policy is crystal clear about disruptive passengers." Amina reached into her carry-on to retrieve Layla's formula. As she did, a flash of platinum caught the light, an airline executive card tucked between bottles and diapers. Its design was subtly different from any standard frequent flyer card. Doyle's eyes narrowed. She'd noticed. Her phone buzzed again. This time, the caller ID was visible to nearby passengers. Skylink Airways Executive Office. She declined the call without a word. Doyle's eyes narrowed. "And who exactly do you think you're calling? Your imam isn't going to save you from federal aviation regulations." The jab landed like another slap, a deliberate mockery of her faith. Several passengers chuckled. The businessman in the tailored suit leaned over. "Miss, you're holding up 180 passengers with this little drama. Some of us have real business to attend to. 12 minutes until mandatory departure." Captain Reeves's voice crackled over the intercom. "Flight crew, please prepare for final boarding completion." Amina glanced at her watch, a simple black timepiece, unremarkable unless you looked closely enough to notice the engraving on the back, "To my brilliant wife, MT." Doyle was building toward her crescendo. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one final time to gather your belongings and deplane voluntarily. If you refuse, I'll have federal air marshals escort you off this aircraft." The TikTok livestream had hit 8,000 viewers. Comments poured in faster than the college student filming could read them, but buried among the judgment were a few different voices. "Something's not right here. Why is the mom so calm? That attendant is way too aggressive. What's going on?" A man seated near the window, dressed in business casual, quietly opened his laptop. He began typing on an aviation industry forum. His post was titled, "Witnessing Discrimination in Real Time, Skylink Flight 847. Within minutes, industry insiders were watching the thread blow up. Doyle pulled out her radio again. "Captain, passenger is non-compliant. Requesting immediate ground security assistance. Copy. Ground crew is standing by." Amina spoke for only the second time, her voice level despite the humiliation. "Ma'am, I understand you believe you're following protocol, but I suggest verifying my passenger status before you take an irreversible step." "Irreversible?" Doyle's voice rose in disbelief. "Lady, the only thing irreversible here is your behavior. You think just because you put on a fancy abaya and manage to buy a first-class ticket, you can disrupt an entire flight." The elderly woman in pearls leaned forward. "Young lady, in my day, parents knew how to travel with children properly. This display is absolutely shameful." More phones appeared. Now the incident was being documented from multiple angles. Facebook live streams, Instagram stories. The hashtag flight drama was starting to trend locally. But Amina stayed calm. She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice, didn't plead. Her composure was unsettling, like someone who knew something the rest of the cabin didn't. Layla had finally quieted, soothed by her mother's steady heartbeat. The infant's dark eyes wandered across the cabin with a wide-eyed curiosity that should have softened the onlookers. Instead, it only seemed to harden their stares. 10 minutes, Doyle announced flatly. "Security will be here in 10 minutes, and this will be resolved one way or another." Amina kissed Layla's forehead and whispered something too quiet for any of the recording phones to catch. But her eyes held a knowledge that made the sharpest passengers shift uncomfortably in their seats. Something was about to change. Captain Derek Reeves strode into the first-class cabin, his gold-striped epaulets catching the overhead lights. 22 years of commercial aviation had taught him how to project absolute authority in passenger conflicts. "What's the situation here, Karen?" Reeves's voice carried the weight of Federal Aviation Command. Doyle straightened, energized by her captain's arrival. "Sir, this passenger has been disruptive since boarding. Screaming child, refusing crew instructions, and now she's being argumentative about deplaning." Reeves studied Amina Rahman with a practiced eye. Muslim woman in a neatly pressed abaya, designer diaper bag, first-class seat. His assumptions aligned neatly with Doyle's narrative. "Ma'am, I'm Captain Reeves. Federal aviation regulations require passenger compliance with crew instructions." The TikTok livestream exploded past 15,000 viewers. The college student filming whispered breathlessly to her audience, "The captain's here now. This is getting serious." Comments poured in. "She's about to get arrested. Captain looks furious. Hope they ban her from flying. Entitled much?" Amina adjusted baby Layla in her arms, discreetly checking her phone. 8 minutes until departure deadline. 8 minutes until what? Reeves demanded, his patience already thin. "Ma'am, whatever schedule you think you're on, it doesn't override federal aviation safety protocols." From the galley, 2 federal air marshals emerged. Plain clothes, but unmistakable to anyone who knew the signs. Their presence shifted the mood instantly. This was no longer a simple passenger service issue, but an implied security threat. Air Marshal Rodriguez approached cautiously, his hand positioned near his concealed weapon. "Captain, what's the nature of the disturbance?" "Passenger noncompliance," Reeves replied curtly, refusing to deplane after crew assessment of disruptive behavior. The man in business casual by the window, the one posting on the aviation industry forum, paused to snap photos. His thread was already gaining traction among insiders. 200 shares, 847 comments, and growing by the minute. Doyle sensed her moment of triumph. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced over the cabin intercom, "we apologize for the delay caused by an uncooperative passenger. We expect to resolve this situation momentarily." Her announcement triggered a ripple of passenger frustration. "Just throw her off already. Some people have no consideration. I've got a connection to make. This is ridiculous." The TikTok viewer count hit 25,000. Local news alerts pinged on phones across Nashville. Viral incident unfolding on Skylink Airways Flight 847. Amina remained seated, Layla now calm and curious about the swirl of voices around her. Her composure had taken on an unsettling edge, as if she were simply waiting for a moment she knew was coming. Air Marshal Johnson flanked her other side. "Ma'am, we need you to gather your belongings and come with us voluntarily." "I need exactly 5 more minutes to resolve this situation," Amina said quietly. Reeves scoffed. "You need 0 minutes. This is a federal aircraft under my command, and you're creating a safety hazard." The elderly woman in pearls leaned forward, speaking loudly enough for the cameras. "Captain, I've been flying for 60 years. This kind of entitled behavior is exactly what's wrong with air travel today." The elderly woman in pearls delivered the line loudly enough for every camera to catch. Multiple passengers nodded in agreement. The narrative had been cemented. Disruptive Muslim mother versus professional crew maintaining order. But the business blogger in seat 3C noticed something the others didn't. His industry experience told him certain details weren't adding up. He typed furiously into his aviation forum post. "Passenger shows 0 signs of actual distress. Too calm. Too deliberate. Something else is happening here." Amina's phone buzzed again. The caller ID flashed briefly. Skylink corporate emergency line. She declined the call. Doyle's eyes narrowed. "Who keeps calling you? Your imam isn't going to override federal aviation law from the ground." The targeted barb drew approving chuckles from nearby passengers. The businessman in the tailored suit lifted his phone higher, angling it to catch Doyle's posture of authority. 6 minutes until mandatory departure," Reeves announced, glancing at his watch. "Ground security is boarding now." Through the cabin windows, passengers could see airport security vehicles surrounding the plane. Red and blue lights strobed across the tarmac. The situation had escalated beyond a simple passenger removal. The TikTok livestream passed 32,000 viewers. The incident was trending nationally. Screenshots were flooding Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Every angle of the confrontation dissected in real time. Ground security officers entered through the forward galley, their belts heavy with restraints, radios, and body cameras. Everything needed for a forcible removal. "Ma'am," the lead security officer announced, "by order of the flight captain and federal air marshals, you are being removed from this aircraft. Please comply voluntarily." Amina looked around the cabin slowly, taking in the hostile faces, the sea of recording phones, the wall of authority surrounding her. Baby Layla gurgled softly, reaching toward the officer's shiny badge. "For minutes," Amina said quietly. Reeves's face tightened with anger. "You have 0 minutes. Officers, remove this passenger and her child immediately." The security team advanced. Passengers leaned forward, phones ready to capture the moment. The TikTok viewer count hit 38,000. But something in Amina's eyes made the sharpest observers hesitate. She wasn't panicking, wasn't pleading, wasn't preparing to resist. She was waiting. Air Marshal Rodriguez hesitated. "Ma'am, if you have some kind of legitimate concern or documentation, now would be the time." "Rodriguez," Reeves snapped, cutting him off. "We don't negotiate with disruptive passengers. Remove her now." Doyle stepped forward, triumph in her tone. "This is exactly why we have security protocols. Some people think they can manipulate situations with fake emergencies and social media drama. The cabin erupted in approval. Passengers applauded Doyle's firm stance. Comments on the live stream praised the professionalism of the crew, completely blind to the prejudice at play. Amina kissed baby Layla's forehead and whispered something only her daughter could hear. Then, with deliberate calm, she reached for her phone. 3 minutes, she murmured. Time's up, Reeves declared. Officers, proceed with removal. As security moved in to physically restrain her, Amina tapped a single contact and switched on the speaker. The call connected instantly. Hi, Habibi, she said softly. I'm having some trouble on your airline. The voice that answered made Captain Reeves's blood run cold. Which aircraft, love? I'll handle this personally. Reeves recognized it immediately. Every Skylink Airways captain knew that voice. It was the voice of the man who signed their paychecks. Flight 847, first class. Amina replied in a gentle, almost conversational tone. The crew is being creative with customer service. The speaker crackled with a barely contained fury. I'm Tariq Rahman, Chief Executive Officer of Skylink Airways. Everyone on that aircraft needs to step away from my wife immediately. The cabin went dead silent except for Layla's soft cooing and the hum of ground equipment outside. Doyle's face drained of color as the truth slammed into her. Reeves staggered back, his authority evaporating in real time. The TikTok livestream shot past 45,000 viewers as the comments exploded. Plot twist of the year. She's the CEO's wife. They're done. Security officers stepped away from Amina like she was radioactive. Tariq's voice came again, ice-cold and unyielding. Captain Reeves. Ms. Doyle, I'll be reviewing this incident personally. And I do mean personally. Amina remained perfectly calm, gently rocking Layla as 180 passengers and crew stared in stunned silence. 2 minutes until departure, Habibi, she said sweetly into the phone. Cancel the departure, Tariq replied without hesitation. We have bigger problems to address first. The woman they had tried to humiliate and remove was married to the man who owned the airline, and the entire world had just watched it unfold live. The silence in the cabin was suffocating. 180 passengers and crew stared at Amina Rahman as if she had just revealed herself to be something other than the quiet, composed mother they'd been watching for the past hour. Baby Layla gurgled happily in her arms, oblivious to the corporate earthquake her mother had just triggered. Tariq Rahman's voice continued through the phone's speaker, every syllable carrying the weight of absolute authority. Amina, are you and Layla physically safe? We're fine now, she replied evenly. Though Ms. Doyle did slap me in front of everyone while Layla was crying. The admission struck the cabin like a lightning bolt. Passengers who had been recording suddenly realized they'd captured the assault of their airline CEO's wife, live. Phones trembled in guilty hands. Captain Reeves found his voice first, though it cracked with desperation. Mr. Rahman, sir, this is Captain Reeves. There's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Tariq's voice sliced through the air like a blade. Captain, I'm watching the live stream right now. 47,000 people just witnessed my wife being assaulted by your crew. The TikTok stream had indeed exploded to 47,000 viewers. The college student filming could barely keep her phone steady as the comments poured in faster than she could read them. The CEO's wife. Everyone's getting fired. This is legendary. Plot twist of the year. Doyle backed against the galley wall, her face cycling through disbelief, fear, and desperate denial. This has to be some kind of joke. She's just a passenger with a screaming baby. Ms. Doyle, Tariq's voice carried a deadly calm. You just called my wife just a passenger after physically assaulting her. Please continue. I'm recording this conversation for our legal team. The business blogger in 3C froze mid-sentence. His Aviation Forum post had ballooned to 2,847 shares as industry insiders realized they were watching corporate history unfold in real time. He deleted his original narrative and began typing again. Breaking, Skylink Airways crew assaults CEO's wife on livestream. Air Marshal Rodriguez slowly raised his hands and stepped back from Amina. Ma'am, Mrs. Rahman, we were responding to crew reports. We had no knowledge of your identity. Of course you didn't, Amina replied gently, adjusting Layla's blanket. That was the point, wasn't it? To see how passengers are treated when crew members make assumptions based on appearance. Reeves scrambled for damage control. Sir, Mr. Rahman, if we could discuss this privately, I'm sure we can resolve. Tariq's laugh was sharp and humorless. Captain, 47,000 people are watching this conversation live. The time for privacy ended when your crew decided to assault my wife in front of an audience. The elderly woman in pearls, who had been applauding Doyle's firm stance just minutes earlier, sank into her seat. She knew her comments about entitled behavior had been captured on multiple live streams, and the realization was written all over her face. Amina reached into her carry-on and pulled out the platinum card she'd hidden earlier. This wasn't just any airline executive card. It was a custom-designed ownership verification, embossed in gold. Mrs. Tariq Rahman, First Family. She held it up for the cameras still rolling. Gasps rippled through the cabin. A few passengers covered their faces, suddenly aware that their smug remarks were about to be tied to their real names online. "Honey," Amina said into the phone, her voice deceptively light. "Should I mention the merger announcement?" Tariq paused, his tone shifting into calculated control. "Not yet, sweetheart. Let's see how they handle the next few minutes first." Doyle's desperation peaked. "This is impossible. I've worked for Skylink for 8 years. I would know the CEO's family." "Would you?" Amina asked quietly. "Have you ever seen photos of Tariq's wife and daughter? Has the company ever shared our personal information with crew members?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The truth was obvious. Like most major corporations, Skylink Airways protected its executive family's privacy with extreme care. Captain Reeves pulled out his radio with shaking hands. "Ground control, this is Flight 847. We need to delay departure indefinitely. We have a situation requiring corporate intervention." Ground control's confused voice crackled back. "Flight 847, please clarify situation. We show security response in progress." Reeves looked helplessly at Amina. She nodded toward her phone. "Ground control," came Tariq Rahman's voice over speaker. "This is the CEO of Skylink Airways. Cancel all security responses to Flight 847 immediately. I'm handling this matter personally." "Copy that, Mr. Rahman." All units standing down. The TikTok livestream surged to 52,000 viewers. Local news vans were already racing toward the airport. Hashtag Skylink scandal was trending nationally alongside hashtag flight incident. Then the real shock hit. Amina tapped her phone again, activating a video call. The screen lit up with a boardroom full of executives, all watching the cabin drama in real time. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced to the cabin, "meet the Skylink Airways executive leadership team. They've been watching this entire incident unfold." The camera panned across the boardroom, showing corporate officers, legal counsel, and a federal aviation liaison. Their faces ranged from shock to fury to cold, calculated damage control. Tariq appeared on screen, a distinguished man in a tailored suit, his presence radiating command. His eyes burned with controlled rage as he scanned the cabin. "Ms. Doyle," he said, his voice carrying across first class, "you physically assaulted my wife in front of 54,000 witnesses. Federal law defines assault on an aircraft as a felony with mandatory prison time." Doyle's legs nearly gave out. "Mr. Rahman, I didn't know. I was following safety protocols." "Safety protocols?" Tariq's eyebrow arched. "Show me the regulation that authorizes crew members to slap passengers holding infants." She couldn't, because no such regulation existed. The businessman who had loudly supported Doyle earlier frantically deleted his social media posts, but screenshots were already spreading like wildfire. Captain Reeves made one last attempt. "Sir, emotions were high, mistakes were made, but surely we can handle this through internal channels." "Internal channels?" Tariq cut him off. "Captain, this incident is being investigated by the Federal Aviation Administration, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Justice. Internal channels are no longer an option." He gestured off camera. "Our legal team is already preparing federal charges, assault, battery, civil rights violations, and child endangerment." Amina spoke for the first time in several minutes, her voice calm but cutting through the silence. "Tariq, should I tell them about the security footage?" A new face appeared on the video call, Skylink's head of legal. "Mrs. Rahman," she said, "federal regulations require all aircraft incidents to be recorded. We have complete documentation from multiple camera angles. The implications hit like a tsunami. Not only had the assault been witnessed live by tens of thousands online, it had also been captured in crystal-clear high definition by federal aviation cameras. Doyle slumped against the galley wall. Her 8-year career was over. Her professional certifications would be revoked. Criminal charges were inevitable. But Tariq Rahman wasn't finished. Captain Reeves, in your 22 years with Skylink, how many discrimination complaints have been filed against your crews? Reeves's face went pale. Sir, I don't have those numbers readily available. I do, Tariq replied coldly. 17 complaints in the past 5 years. All quietly settled. All buried by corporate. That pattern ends today. The cabin fell into stunned silence. Skylink Airways, a name passengers trusted, had been covering up discrimination for years. And today's live-streamed assault had blown that facade apart. The TikTok viewer count surged past 58,000. National news outlets were breaking into regular programming. Hashtag Skylink assault was trending globally. Air Marshal Rodriguez spoke carefully. Mr. Rahman, sir, we were responding to crew reports. We followed standard protocol for disruptive passenger situations. Standard protocol for what? Tariq's voice cut like steel. For a Muslim mother traveling alone with an infant? For a passenger who never raised her voice, never made demands, never resisted crew instructions. The marshals had no answer, because there was none. Amina kissed baby Layla's forehead and looked directly into the TikTok camera. For everyone watching this, remember, assumptions can destroy lives. Today, nearly 60,000 people saw what happens when prejudice meets accountability. The college student filming whispered shakily, "This is the most insane thing I've ever seen. The CEO's wife just got assaulted by his own employees, on live TV." Tariq's voice carried final authority. Flight 847 will remain grounded until every passenger deplanes, and this aircraft is cleared for federal investigation. Ms. Doyle, Captain Reeves, you're suspended immediately pending criminal charges. Doyle finally broke, tears streaming down her face. Please, Mr. Rahman, I have a family, a mortgage. I made a mistake. You made a choice, Amina corrected gently. And choices have consequences. Today, those consequences are very public. The video call's frame widened, revealing more executives entering the boardroom, federal investigators, aviation attorneys, crisis management teams. The full weight of corporate and federal power was already moving in response to one viral assault. Tariq addressed the cabin directly. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed something that happens far too often in aviation. Discrimination based on appearance and assumptions. The difference today is that everyone saw it. Everyone recorded it. And everyone will remember it. Layla chose that moment to laugh, a pure, innocent sound that cut through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. The merger announcement can wait, Tariq said, looking at his wife with open love and admiration. We have more important work to do first. Amina smiled at the camera, her dignity unshaken despite everything she had endured. Change happens when power confronts prejudice publicly. Today, 60,000 people saw what real accountability looks like. The aircraft doors opened as federal investigators boarded, cameras flashing, documentation already underway. The woman they had tried to remove now owned their futures, and the whole world was watching. On her phone, the boardroom video call shifted into a federal tribunal as investigators, attorneys, and aviation officials joined the conference. What had begun as a simple family travel day had become a full-scale corporate crisis. Witnessed live by 63,000 viewers, Tariq Rahman's voice carried the weight of absolute corporate authority. Before we address individual consequences, let's establish the facts. Skylink Airways generated $4.2 billion in revenue last year. Customer satisfaction ratings, 91% overall. He paused, letting the numbers land heavily. Today's incident threatens our operating certificates, insurance coverage, and federal contracts worth approximately $800 million annually. Federal Aviation Administration investigator Sarah Carter appeared on the video call from Washington. Mr. Rahman, preliminary review indicates multiple violations of CFR Title 14, Section 121.580, regarding passenger safety and crew conduct. Captain Reeves, still standing in the aisle, tried to maintain a shred of dignity. "Sir, with respect, Ms. Doyle's actions don't reflect standard Skylink protocols." "Don't they?" Tarek's tone cut like a scalpel. He turned to legal. "Please share Captain Reeves's crew complaint history with everyone watching." Skylink's head legal counsel, David Park, glanced at his tablet, reading with clinical detachment. Captain Reeves has commanded crews involved in 7 discrimination complaints over 8 years. Average settlement per incident, $250,000. The number hit the cabin like a physical blow. Reeves had cost the company nearly $2 million in covered-up discrimination cases, and now 70,000 people knew it. "Ms. Doyle," Tarek Rahman continued, his voice colder now, "your employment record shows 3 previous incidents involving passengers from minority backgrounds. All resulted in corporate interventions and sensitivity training you clearly ignored." Doyle's voice cracked with desperation. "Mr. Rahman, those were different situations. This passenger was genuinely disruptive, with her screaming baby." "Was she?" Amina interrupted quietly, still cradling baby Layla with calm maternal grace. "Tarek, should I play the complete cabin audio recording for everyone?" Every face in the aircraft went pale. Federal regulations required complete audio documentation of crew-passenger interactions, and they had all forgotten about the permanent record. Tarek nodded to someone off camera. "Legal, cue the audio from initial boarding through the assault." The aircraft's speakers crackled to life as the damning timeline played back in chronological order. Doyle's voice. "Control that screaming child, or I'll have security remove you both." The sharp crack of flesh meeting flesh. Doyle. "Some people don't know how to travel appropriately." Doyle. "People like you always try to scam upgrades. I know every trick." Doyle. "Your imam isn't going to save you from federal aviation regulations." Each recorded phrase layered into an unshakable case of premeditated discrimination and assault. The TikTok audience, now 67,000 strong, listened in stunned silence as the evidence mounted. Captain Reeves slumped against a seatback. The audio was undeniable, and his vocal support of Doyle's actions made him legally complicit in federal crimes. Federal investigator Carter continued her precise assessment. "Mr. Rahman, we're looking at potential violations under U.S. Code Title 49, Section 46504, interference with flight crew members. However, in this case, the crew appears to have been the primary aggressor." "Absolutely correct," Tarek replied, each word laced with legal precision. "Our legal team has identified federal charges, including assault under federal jurisdiction, civil rights violations under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, and child endangerment in the presence of an infant." Air Marshal Rodriguez, who had remained silent during most of the revelations, finally spoke carefully. "Sir, we responded to crew reports in good faith. We had no knowledge this was discrimination rather than a legitimate safety concern." Tarek's expression softened slightly toward the federal agents. "Agent Rodriguez, I understand that air marshals follow established protocols based on crew assessments. But those protocols require independent verification of crew claims before escalating to physical force." He turned to David Park, Skylink's head legal counsel. "David, what's our total liability exposure if this incident goes to federal court with full media coverage?" Park consulted multiple tablets, his calculations mirrored on the boardroom screens. "Conservative estimate, 15 to 25 million in punitive damages, given the viral nature and documented emotional distress. That's before factoring in potential class action suits from previous victims now likely to come forward." In Seat 3C, the business blogger had abandoned his industry forum and was now on Twitter, where his real-time updates were being retweeted thousands of times per minute. His latest post read, "Skylink Airways CEO's wife assaulted by crew on live stream. Federal investigation underway. Stock price down 8% in after-hours trading." The financial implications were staggering and immediate. Tarek Rahman addressed the entire aircraft through the speaker system, his voice commanding and resolute. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed corporate accountability in real time. Ms. Doyle and Captain Reeves are terminated immediately, effective now." Doyle's anguished scream echoed through the cabin. You can't fire me for following established safety protocols. Safety protocols? Amina asked with devastating calm, her tone steady but edged with maternal authority. Ms. Doyle, please cite the specific federal regulation that authorizes a crew member to slap a passenger holding an infant. Complete silence. Mr. Park, Tariq continued with corporate efficiency, please outline immediate consequences for both terminated employees. Skylink's head legal counsel consulted his notes. Ms. Doyle faces federal assault charges with a mandatory minimum sentence of 6 months imprisonment under federal aviation law. Captain Reeves faces charges of enabling assault and willful failure to protect passenger safety. The severity of the charges landed like a physical blow. Furthermore, Tariq continued relentlessly, both employees forfeit all benefits, pensions, and insurance coverage under our zero-tolerance discrimination policy. Professional certifications will be revoked by the FAA within 72 hours. Reeves found his voice one last time, desperation bleeding through. Sir, 22 years of dedicated service to this airline. 22 years of systematically enabling discrimination. Tariq corrected with brutal precision. Your record shows a documented pattern of protecting crew members who repeatedly violated passenger rights. The TikTok livestream surged past 71,000 viewers as major news outlets picked up the story. Hashtag Skylink accountability, hashtag corporate justice, and hashtag airline discrimination trended globally. Federal investigator Carter outlined the next steps with methodical clarity. Mr. Rahman, the Department of Transportation requires immediate implementation of enhanced crew training and comprehensive passenger protection protocols across all Skylink properties. Already in development, Tariq replied smoothly. Effective immediately, Skylink Airways is implementing the Family Protection Protocol. Any crew member who physically contacts a passenger without direct safety justification will face immediate termination and federal charges. He clicked to a slide visible to the boardroom cameras. New mandatory training requirements. 40 hours of bias awareness. Advanced de-escalation techniques. Comprehensive federal passenger rights education. Failure to complete successfully results in automatic certification loss. The scope of the reforms was unprecedented in commercial aviation history. Ms. Doyle, Tariq Rahman said, addressing his former employee directly, you will be escorted from this aircraft by federal marshals and formally charged with assault in federal court. Your discriminatory actions were witnessed by 71,000 people and permanently recorded by federal aviation cameras. Doyle's legs buckled. Security officers stepped in to support her as the full weight of consequences bore down. Captain Reeves, Tariq continued, your termination is effective immediately. Federal investigators will systematically review every flight you've commanded for potential civil rights violations over your entire career. Reeves nodded numbly, knowing his aviation career was finished, but Tariq wasn't done. Legal, he ordered. Announce our new comprehensive passenger bill of rights. David Park, Skylink's head legal counsel, read from extensively prepared documents. Effective immediately, Skylink Airways implements the following passenger protections. Crew members may not physically contact passengers without direct safety justification. All crew, passenger interactions must be recorded and subject to federal oversight. Discrimination complaints will bypass local management entirely and report directly to federal civil rights enforcement. The reforms went far beyond current industry standards, setting a new benchmark for passenger protection across commercial aviation. Air Marshal Rodriguez stepped forward respectfully. Mr. Rahman, what's the new protocol for federal air marshals in potential discrimination cases? Excellent question, Agent Rodriguez. You and Agent Johnson will receive comprehensive additional training on recognizing crew-initiated discrimination versus legitimate passenger threats. Tariq's approach emphasized systematic education over punishment for law enforcement officers who had acted in good faith under flawed protocols. The college student filming on TikTok could hardly contain her excitement. 73,000 people are watching the most epic corporate accountability moment in aviation history. This CEO just fired his own employees for discriminating against his wife. Federal investigator Carter concluded her preliminary review. Mr. Rahman, Skylink Airways' immediate response exceeds all federal requirements for discrimination incidents. The Department of Transportation will use this comprehensive approach as a model for industry-wide reform. Tariq looked directly into the cabin cameras, addressing the massive online audience. Today proves definitively that discrimination has real consequences, public consequences, permanent consequences. He turned to Amina, his voice softening. "Sweetheart, are you ready to complete your trip?" Amina kissed baby Layla's forehead tenderly. "Actually, I think we'll take a different flight. This aircraft needs time to recover from today's lessons." The irony was perfect. The CEO's wife choosing not to fly on her husband's airline after being assaulted by his own employees. "Understood completely," Tariq replied with quiet pride. "Our corporate jet will be ready in 30 minutes. As federal marshals escorted Doyle and Reeves from the aircraft in restraints, passengers sat in stunned silence. Their phones had captured history, but they had also recorded their own complicity in cheering on discrimination. The woman they had assumed was entitled had owned the airline all along, and the world had just witnessed what real power looked like when it was used for justice. Within 4 hours, Skylink Airways underwent the most comprehensive transformation in aviation history. Federal marshals led Doyle and Reeves through the terminal in handcuffs. Their disgrace was captured by news crews from 6 major networks. Doyle's perp walk became an iconic image. The flight attendant who had slapped a Muslim CEO's wife now facing federal prosecution. Her mugshot, released within hours, showed a woman whose 8-year career had ended in criminal charges and industry blacklisting. Reeves followed in identical shame, his captain's stripes stripped from his uniform before he reached the police car. 22 years of aviation authority reduced to the status of a federal defendant, all witnessed by millions online. The TikTok livestream, which had peaked at 89,000 viewers, became the most watched corporate accountability moment in social media history. The college student who had filmed it gained 2.3 million followers overnight. But the most important change happened systematically and immediately. Skylink Airways Emergency Board meeting convened within 2 hours. Tariq Rahman addressed shareholders via livestream, choosing transparency over spin. Today's incident revealed systemic problems we can no longer ignore or settle quietly. Skylink Airways will become the industry standard for passenger dignity and crew accountability. The Family Protection Protocol launched across all Skylink flights within 24 hours. New signage appeared in every aircraft. Every family belongs here. Respect first. Verification always. Crew retraining began immediately. Skylink contracted with the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, to develop comprehensive bias awareness programs. Failure to complete training within 30 days meant automatic termination. The Passenger Bill of Rights became federal law within 6 months, sponsored by senators who had watched the viral incident. The Rahman standards required all U.S. airlines to implement similar protections. FAA investigator Sarah Carter released preliminary findings that shocked the industry. The Skylink Airways incident represents systemic discrimination patterns across commercial aviation. Immediate industry-wide reform is mandatory. Doyle's federal trial began 3 months later. The prosecution's evidence was overwhelming. 89,000 live witnesses, multiple camera angles, recorded audio, and FAA documentation. She received the maximum sentence, 18 months in federal prison, plus 5 years probation. Reeves faced separate federal charges for enabling assault and violating passenger safety protocols. His conviction ended not only his career, but also his pension, benefits, and professional reputation forever. The financial impact was immediate and decisive. Skylink stock initially dropped 11%, but recovered within a week as investors recognized the company's proactive reforms. Competitors scrambled to implement similar protections, terrified of their own viral incidents. Corporate clients flocked to Skylink Airways, particularly business travelers, women, and Muslim and minority families, who now preferred the airline that had demonstrated real accountability. Revenue increased 23% within 6 months. Customer satisfaction among diverse travelers reached 97%, the highest in the industry's history. Air Marshals Rodriguez and Johnson completed their new discrimination recognition training and became advocates for reforming federal law enforcement protocols on aircraft. The business blogger's real-time coverage earned him a Pulitzer Prize nomination. His documentation of systemic discrimination and the immediate corporate reckoning became required reading in business schools. But the most meaningful change was cultural. The phrase "people like you" vanished from Skylink vocabulary. Crew members began interactions with, "How can I help your family travel comfortably?" Chun, the college student who had live-streamed the incident, used her viral fame to launch a civil rights documentary series. Her first film, 35,000 Feet, Discrimination in the Sky, won multiple awards and sparked federal legislation. The incident inspired the Airline Accountability Act, requiring public reporting of all discrimination complaints and mandatory bias training across the industry. No more quiet settlements. Transparency was now the law. Most importantly, families traveling with children reported dramatically improved experiences. The assumption shifted from problematic passengers to customers deserving assistance. Tariq and Amina Rahman established the Family Travel Foundation, providing legal support for passengers facing airline discrimination. Within 2 years, they had handled 847 cases and achieved a 100% settlement rate. 6 months after the incident, Amina received the NAACP Courage Award. Her acceptance speech was simple. Dignity shouldn't require wealth or power. Today it doesn't, because the world watched accountability happen in real time. The federal reforms spread internationally. European airlines adopted the Rahman standards voluntarily. Asian carriers implemented family protection protocols. Global aviation culture shifted toward passenger dignity. Doyle's assault conviction became a permanent cautionary tale in crew training worldwide. Every new flight attendant learned what happens when prejudice overrides professionalism. Reeves's career destruction served as a warning to pilots everywhere. Command authority never justifies enabling discrimination. The aircraft where the incident occurred was retrofitted with advanced recording equipment and bias detection technology, becoming Skylink's flagship for industry-leading passenger protection. Baby Layla, now walking and talking, traveled frequently with her parents. Flight crews competed to provide exceptional service to the family that had transformed their industry. Aviation publications called it the Rahman transformation, the moment commercial flight culture shifted from unchecked crew authority to passenger dignity. 2 years later, the Skylink Airways incident became Harvard Business School's most studied case in crisis management and corporate accountability. Amina's calm response under public assault became required viewing in conflict resolution courses worldwide. Her refusal to escalate, while protecting her daughter, proved that true power comes from principle, not position. Doyle never worked in aviation again. Her conviction for assaulting a passenger barred her from any customer service role. She took a warehouse job in rural Tennessee, her fall from authority complete and irreversible. Reeves's license revocation ended his career at 54. No airline would hire a captain who had enabled crew assault. His name became a cautionary whisper in pilot training programs. Command authority without moral courage destroys everything. The Rahman standards became global aviation law. 17 countries adopted family protection protocols modeled on Skylink's reforms. Discrimination complaints dropped 67% within 2 years. Chen's livestream reached 47 million total views across platforms. She built a career documenting discrimination across service industries, her latest film exploring everyday bias in hospitality. Financially, Skylink soared. It became the most profitable airline in America, with customer loyalty rates exceeding 94%. Diverse families specifically chose Skylink, confident their dignity was protected. Life stories like Amina's proved that preparation, composure, and principles could dismantle institutional prejudice. Her example showed millions of parents they did not have to endure humiliation silently. Her dignity under assault became a model for responding to discrimination with power instead of rage, systemic reform instead of personal revenge. The viral moment inspired legislative action worldwide. The International Air Transport Association adopted passenger dignity standards based directly on Skylink's reforms. The United Nations referenced the incident in human rights discussions. The most meaningful change was personal. Families of all backgrounds no longer boarded flights bracing for confrontation. Children saw their parents' dignity upheld by policy instead of challenged by prejudice. The incident taught the world that discrimination has costs, immediate, public, and permanent. But it also proved that accountability can spark lasting progress. Today, baby Layla travels often with her parents, greeted by crews who compete to provide exceptional service. The child whose crying once triggered discrimination now experiences aviation's new culture of family respect. Every week, new stories emerge from parents protected by the Rahman standards. Videos of crews offering help instead of hostility, assistance instead of assumptions. Have you ever faced discrimination while traveling with your family? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters, and change happens when parents speak truth together. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs to see what's possible when dignity meets determination. Subscribe to Muslim Stories Unheard for more powerful true stories of family strength, resilience, and triumph, proof that our community's power is unstoppable. Hit that notification bell, because every parent deserves respect, no matter who tries to shame them for loving their children openly and without apology.